However you are and whenever you are, welcome, good souls, to Paranormal Now. I'm Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. And tonight, we are turning off real big and going very deep down the rabbit hole. Joining us is M.G. Stevens, the author of the Boogeyman Chronicles, and her personal story, her family story, is beyond fascinating. So we'll get to MG in just a little bit, but last minute decision, MG is going to be joining us with the one and only Mac Barnes, a.k.a. the Star Wars Encyclopedia, who you know has been on the show before. The Book of Boba Fett just finished. We have to talk about it, but don't worry. We're going to talk about it in a non-spoiler fashion. As usual, after tonight's airing, if you missed it, you can catch it on the replay at 2 a.m. Fridays, so later tonight, on the UNX network. So just go to unxnetwork.com and you can always catch this show and other fantastic shows on this new network, which is just exploding. And if you're a fan of Paranormal Now and Coffee and UFOs, please consider becoming a Patreon supporter. I put my heart and soul and time into these shows, so any support is deeply appreciated. And I'll put the Patreon link down below for yourself. And in the last 30 minutes, we'll experiment again with the Skype call-in line. So in the show description, if you want to call in, ask your questions of MG or myself in the last half hour of tonight's show, we'll open up the Skype call-in line for you to give a call. So all you have to do is click on the link, call, and I'll bring you on. And you know the deal. I'm a fanatic coffee drinker, and this is Alien Coffee Bean coffee that I'm drinking right now, which keeps me going for morning, noon, and night. And if you want to drink more coffee for yourself, you can get a mystery 20% discount code. So go to aliencoffeebean.com and put in mystery, all caps, 20 for 20% off if you live in the US, that is. And for all of those who have followed me over the years, I appreciate your support. If you don't want to become a Patreon supporter, you can support just by liking, commenting, and subscribing. So just force click that button on YouTube to subscribe and get notifications as well, so you don't miss a single episode. Because as many of you know, now we have Coffee and UFOs as a regular series on Saturday nights. So we've got a lot going on this channel now. Hey, Carl, welcome. Justin T, haven't seen you in a while. Justin, thanks for popping in. I appreciate that. All right, so let's bring on the one and only Mac Barnes and MG to join a conversation about Star Wars. Mac, are you there? Is that a dog hacking?
Okay. That's my dog. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Since this was my first time using this, I had to kind of like figure out how to cut my camera on and cut my mic back on and stuff. But
gotcha. Well,
we're good.
As long as it was Mac hacking up, then we're good.
No.
So, Mac, you have to tell us. Well, first, for those who are not familiar with you, you're the owner of Kessel Run Comics. And, I consider you a true expert in all things Star Wars. So over the years, we've had you on here and there to discuss, different shows in development, movies. And tonight, spoiler free, we will talk about the Book of Boba Fett. So I'll leave it to you. What do you think?
Ultimately, I think out of 5 stars, I do 3.5 on this show. And for that, a lot of people will have to kind of dive into the series for their own kind of gist, or what does it for them, because for what may do it for me and what may not do it for me might be the exact opposite for you. As the three of us were kind of talking prior to the show, I feel like definitely some of us liked it more than others, or we liked different aspects of the TV show.
I see. Yeah. If you had to compare this to The Mandalorian.
Personally, for me, I do think The Mandalorian is a lot more engaging, both like lore and story-wise, but also just from someone on the outside looking in. It seems just like that the creative team, whether that's you're giving most of the credit to Filoni and Favreau, or whether you're just like saying the collective story group of Lucasfilm, I think when they tell the stories through the lens of the Mandalorian, whether it's like through that actual character or just the show itself, I can see a lot more comfortability with the writing and the way the story is progressing from episode to episode and from season to season now that we have multiple seasons of The Mandalorian, whereas I can't make that same sort of comparison with Book of Boba Fett because we just finished season 1. But like I said, just ultimately I feel like the team at Lucasfilm are more comfortable telling stories through the Mandalorian's eyes and through his, story or his lifetime than we're going to see Boba Fett. Boba Fett, because Boba Fett is an established character with such a big fan base, you kind of have to almost like tiptoe around that character. Whereas with someone like the Mandalorian or even Grogu, like you can kind of almost do whatever you want because there's no expectation. There's no demand from the fans, really.
Yeah. MG, what about yourself?
I completely agree. The Mandalorian was like this new character, so they had a lot more to play with and they could go into lots of different directions. But Boba Fett was this legendary bounty hunter. We didn't know much about him. And then all of a sudden, we find out, he's a clone, this and that, all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, I don't want to spoil anything, but when I first started watching the Book of Boba Fett, I was expecting this kick-ass dude, you know what I mean? Like, Miss Boba Fett, come on, start kicking some ass. But when it was kind of like we were talking about Disney-fied and family friendly, and he was kind of like this Boy Scout, and he was always kind of getting his butt kicked. I was just kind of like, what is happening right now? What is happening? I was really like, I was at the point of tears. I was like, my whole world is coming apart. Like, what is happening? And then like by the 3rd episode, I think I was starting to tear up out of disappointment. I was just like, what the hell? And but it redeemed itself. So,
well, I mean, the beginning of the story, it does kind of lend itself to a rebirth of a person because he's literally crawling out of the belly of the beast. So the symbolism there, like I get where they were going with it. His sort of like finding a family, which he hasn't had since he lost his father. And I can see how that could affect him emotionally. And so I was seeing bits and pieces of it. But for me, it just wasn't convincing enough. It wasn't strong enough because of what you said. We're coming from a well-known, strong character, and then within just an episode, he's someone completely different. But we have to admit that sand monster that came out with the multiple arms,
crazy.
He did pretty good job on him. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the special effects were really amazing, and yeah. So. Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, I think they should have. It seemed a little bit rushed. They were trying to form his character and then get the story going, and you know what I mean. It just seemed like sometimes 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag. Sometimes you're just kind of like, okay, there's a lot going on here.
Right,
Mac, did you like the flashback thing going into the back of the tank and then?
I thought that was an interesting way to kind of dissect the story and make kind of this half about this and these ideas and this story is being told while during the present day it was a completely different situation even though it was the same character. I think that was a really unique way to tell that story and kind of do that at the same time without having to break because imagine if you took all of the flashback stuff and just made it like entirely the first 2 or 3 episodes. That takes up way too much of the show, and you're not telling enough of what most of the fans I feel like wanted more, which was maybe do the first episode with the whole escaping the Sarlacc pit and reestablishing himself in the underworld. But then I could see them taking all of that and just doing 1 episode, and then the other 6 just being dedicated to the present day. Ultimately they made the decisions they made because they thought they were the best decisions with, I guess, the story that was written, because that's another thing that I've started trying to take into account so much more is calm my fanship and how much I love for it and how passionate I am. Like MG said earlier, I do have friends in my circle that are way bigger Boba Fett fans than me. I would say I'm a bigger Star Wars fan overall, but I have 2 friends in particular that are truly diehard Boba Fett fans could really take or leave anything else in the Star Wars universe. But Boba Fett's their guy. And I did have one buddy after the 3rd episode, he cried and he was like, man, this just isn't at all what I thought it was going to be. They're ruining the character of Boba Fett. And ultimately, I told him, I said, look, you can't judge any of this until the whole story is laid out in front of you. And then when all 7 episodes are there, you can kind of have that retrospect of, you know, what you didn't know at just episode 3 or 4 and why you were confused at the trajectory of where this was going to end up. But ultimately, I think that, and I had some conversation with some people on Instagram too that are really big Star Wars fans through my Instagram page. And, you know, some people are putting up like photos of Boba Fett saying, not my Boba Fett, or, you know, lame Fett or beta Fett and stuff like that. And I've reached out to some of these people and asked like why they feel that way. Because even though I do feel the exact same way as MG, and I don't know if you also feel that way, Alan, about like you really wanted to see a lot more vigorous and deadly Boba Fett, one that was very proactive and doing it all himself and fighting almost every episode. But ultimately, now that I can sit back and look at all 7 episodes and the arc ultimately and the character progression that happened in that time, though it be just a few short episodes, after the finale, it really just kind of all culminated to me of this was a hell of a way to change the character of Boba Fett for what I feel like personally will be for the better. Because, and I don't think enough people have talked about this, there were a couple of times in that finale episode where his rage almost boiled over and it almost got him in trouble. And Fennec was kind of able to say like, hey buddy, like chill out, you'll get your chance. Like, you know, there's another time basically. And kind of she's putting him down, you know, the right path, I think, in the ways that he wants to change. Ultimately, he's still in control because with every decision throughout this whole show they've made, Fennec's always quick to offer up like her suggestion or what she thinks is right. And Boba Fett heeds what she says, but he doesn't always make the same decision or agree. But I think that like where Boba Fett wants to go now, he's well on his way. But at the same time, I don't think this is permanent. I really think Boba Fett is a loose cannon. I think that if the right catalyst comes into the mix, he will go from being this upstanding, like, mafia, what is it called? They used a G word to describe it in the show. I forgot. Gatra. He's like, you know, now Boba Fett's, you know, the Gatra of Tatooine and all that sort of thing. Well, what if somebody else from his past, like Bosk, comes into the mix and really shakes things up and for whatever reason takes a shot at his dad, you know, like Cad Bane brought up his dad and that sort of thing. And ultimately, I think that Boba Fett can go really south. I feel like it could take a 180. He could get dark. He could be like, oh, real mafia stuff. Like, we're going to command a hit on this person. We're going to go physically after this person. We're going to start torturing people. Because that was something at the very beginning. He was like, I don't believe in torture. And I was like, Boba Fett doesn't believe in torture. What is this? The mess we've gotten ourselves into.
I'm not familiar with, like, the comic book version of Boba Fett or, you know, the non-cinematic universe.
Right.
So, you know, was he that kind of person that would actually torture, or did he just stand by while the baddies did that? And he just was a bounty hunter.
Well, I would say that there has definitely been 1 or 2 comics out there that he has had to kind of do like the simple type of torture, like take the tip of a knife or something and dig it into the corner of your shoulder to make you scream a little bit and give up some information, but nothing like, you know, pulling the nails out of your nail bed or like pulling teeth out of someone's head. Like, he's not doing anything crazy like that.
He was never sadistic.
No,
right?
No. Yeah. But he wants answers and results, and he'll do almost whatever it takes in the comics to get results.
Yeah, you know, but I think that, and without any spoilers, towards the end of episode 7, I think we saw Boba Fett wake up a little bit there at the end.
Yeah.
That last move that he did, I was like, woo, all right.
Dirty.
Yep. That was smooth too.
Yes.
So here's the thing though, we had these 2 episodes, which I understand how they played into the whole series, the whole season, but 2 episodes that were really Mandalorian episodes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you think that Grogu was brought back too fast, or are you cool with it?
Honestly, I'm just more or less kind of confused because I think if you're the studio, like I was saying, if you're the story group of Lucasfilm, if you're the one kind of controlling the direction of what we get and what we don't get out of these characters and out of the shows and who makes appearances and who doesn't, I would think you would want to kind of like drive up that yearning for him and like,
Right.
not only work that into like, pumping people up for season 3 later in 2023 in the fourth quarter fiscally, but also you're like trying to push those margins on like toys and maybe finally putting Grogu and Mando in a comic. I know this past week, a comic came out and it finally had them on the cover. So far, they had not been on the cover or in the interior story of any comic book. And finally, this past week, their first cover appearance came out, but they have still yet to be in an actual story. And I can't for the reason, I can't for the life of me think of a reason why Lucasfilm collectively would keep Mandalorian and Grogu out of comics and books and other medium after they have hit so hard. It's surprising.
Grogu was like $1 billion character.
Yeah,
there's a lot of money in Grogu, but I had mixed feelings because keeping that gravity of the separation would create more desire to see Grogu and that anticipation. But at the same time, I also loved the moments, like every freaking moment in that episode. I loved, like even the last shot of the episode. I was like, okay, maybe I plot wise wanted Grogu to stay away longer, but I'm cool with this.
We're all soft for Grogu ultimately. Like we're not going to say no Grogu.
Yeah.
What about you, MG?
Yeah, the same way. I mean, they're all playing on our, sort of primal desire to see like a cute puppy dog or something. You know what I mean? We love Grogu. They know we love him. He's like a drug at this point. We want more Grogu. And I do as a story, when you're thinking about the story, you're like, okay, maybe it's too soon. It was just so quick. It was like he made that decision to go back and then I don't want to spoil it, but then you see him coming in and you're like, I just knew that's how it was going to go. But yeah, at the same time, it was like, oh, but he's back. Yay.
Yeah. I think when everyone saw him with Luke, it was like, oh, a breath of fresh air, it was like, that's great. And it was just so moving in that episode as well. All right, so Mac, I'm going to let you go. And before I do, what's the future of Kessel Run Comics?
Oh, brother, I am glad you asked. So actually, within the last, I'd say 4 to 6 weeks, we figured out that unfortunately our brick and mortar location hasn't been paying for itself to the degree that we can really afford to stay open to the same degree. Of course, I want to keep my doors open. So for the next few weeks, as I slowly pack things up and move to an online format, and eventually will be 80 or 90% online, with supplementing that 10 or 20% of continuing to serve my local community that have been very loyal and do want to continue getting books and product through me. As well as I'll start going to like conventions and shows and flea markets and that sort of thing and setting up a booth. But yeah, it looks like, one chapter of me being the proprietor and partner with my dad in Kessel Run Comics is going to come to a close. But, this, like I said, this isn't the book closing. This is just one chapter closing and a new chapter opening. So if anything, I'm going to become more accessible to the online community. So for anybody listening that might want to buy some books from me, or, I sell statues, graphic novels, all sorts of things, Funko Pops. Just look up my website, kesselruncomics.net, or look at me on Facebook or Instagram at Kessel Run Comics.
All right. Thanks, Mac. Have a good night, man.
Absolutely. Y'all do the same. It was a wonderful time being with you guys, and it was nice meeting you, MG.
Nice meeting you too, Mac.
All right. Good night, brother. All right. MG Stevens. She is the author of the Boogeyman Chronicles and a neurodivergent medium empath who grew up knowing she was very different, but not sure in what way. She started experiencing paranormal activity as early as 2 years old. Her mother was also a well-known psychic that worked with detectives and solving cases. MG struggled to accept her abilities for decades and tried her best to dismiss all of the terrifying encounters she was having on a daily basis. After many years of hesitancy, MG finally learned that her abilities could help people and begin to slowly accept and develop them. MG also has a podcast of the same name where she delves into the concept of paranormal PTSD. MG, welcome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so your story is, I will say, very colorful. There's a lot to unpack. So what happened at 2 years old? I mean, and how do you even remember that?
I always had a really, really, really scary good memory for especially stuff when I was like really, really young. I was able to I remember like the color of the carpet my dad in his new bachelor pad after he divorced mom. I still remember that. I was barely two. I just remember weird things. But it was actually, I think I was a bit earlier than two. I still remember my first encounter, the first one I remember anyway. I remember standing in my crib. It was at night. There was a night light on. I could see enough in the room. But I remember I was standing up my crib holding onto the railing. And I remember looking up and I could see something floating above me, but yet I was the thing looking down. So I could see the whole scene. I could see me standing up in the crib. I can see me look, but yet I could see, and I kept pointing at something. So apparently I saw it. It was terrifying. So that was that first encounter. And then about maybe a year or two later, it happened again. It was Easter, and I was in my little Easter dress, my little purple tricycle, and my mom and my middle sibling were trying to hide eggs, and they wanted me to, play along, and I was just not having it. But I distinctly remember the same thing happening. It was very, just sudden. I looked up. I saw something floating. Don't know. Still to this day, I don't know what I saw, but yet I saw the whole scene. I was looking down and I saw the whole thing. I still don't know what that was.
And I guess, I mean, did you have other people that continued to validate that experience as time went on?
I didn't really understand what happened, and I kind of tucked that away. Like, that was weird. Maybe I just dreamt it, but I didn't. And I just kind of tucked it away. And then just this last year, I talked to Paul Eno. As we all know, he's a paranormal investigator. He's been, worked with the Warrens. He's been, doing this for a long time. And I just said, what was that? And he just said, I don't really know. He said, I think, this is the answer he gave me. He said, sometimes in the multiverse, you have a shifting identity point and you're split and you're in two places at once. And, if you talk to Paul, he's got all kinds of stories about stuff like that. So that's what he kind of surmised it to be.
Yeah. Paul was on here a few episodes ago. And he really has a fascinating mind. He's been in this for a long time, and has seen some things and like you said, interacted with a lot of interesting people. Mm-hmm. So let's start broad and then we'll get a little bit more specific, right? So where do you fall as far as paranormal phenomena go in general? Do you believe that all these things that people are seeing, experiencing, first of all, are real? And if so, are they all connected somehow?
I do believe it's real. I do, and I'm not, there's that occasional person that might have a mental health issue and they might have hallucinations, there's that. But I wrote this book because in the last few years, I've been listening in my spare time more and more paranormal podcasts, and I was just astounded. I'm like, oh my God, and we have a ton of paranormal podcasts and shows, and you could have a new guest on every single day or week, and never run out of people. And I just kept listening to all these people's stories, and it really broke my heart on one end because you had people like me who have had a lifetime of paranormal encounters, and they don't know what to make of it. And they were always told, oh, you're crazy, you're imagining things. and doubting themselves, or you had that one person that had that one or two encounters and they're still trying to make sense of it. But they always started out with, I'm not crazy. You got to believe me. Or you might think I'm crazy, or I promise you I'm not crazy. I know what I saw. I know what I heard. And you know what I mean? Your heart breaks for them, because I know I've been in their shoes, and you don't want anyone to think you're crazy, but yet you know what you saw. And I really want to.
Is that some people like us, or you in particular, you've seen things, right? And for a lot of other people, they have not seen things. So from their perspective, it could just be your imagination.
Exactly. I mean, you're always going to have the skeptic who, and you got to put yourself in their shoes. They've never seen or heard anything, and they think all this is bunk. They think it's all craziness. And so, you got to kind of put yourself in their shoes too, and be like, well, they've never seen anything. How are they supposed to really understand? So yeah, I mean,
oh no, go ahead.
I was just saying that, it really broke my heart, because I was listening to a podcast or two a day, even more sometimes. And, I just wanted to start normalizing paranormal encounters. Of course you're going to have the skeptic, and that's fine. But I just wanted to kind of make people more comfortable. So that's why I created my podcast, because I wanted to create like a safe space where people can come on anonymously if they want, and they can just say, hey, look, I saw this thing and I still don't know what it is. But, talking it out, it's almost like therapy. Talking it out kind of makes you feel better. It kind of gets it off your chest. And then you're just kind of like, okay, I did it. I finally talked about it. Because holding it in, it does something to you. It really kind of festers. And so I wanted to normalize paranormal encounters, talking about them, sharing them. And I wrote the book because I kept jumping in. Every time I had a guest, I was like, oh yeah, I went through that. Oh yeah. And then I started realizing, wait a minute, nobody really knows what who I am, because I'm very private. No one really knows what I do and my experiences. And I was always told all through the years, you got to write that book. You got to write that book. And I was just like, no one wants to hear my dumb stories. And then all of a sudden I started the podcast, and it just kind of grew from there. It was like, I really need to get these stories out and just tell people, look, this is what I went through. I don't have all the answers. But let's start talking about it and not being ashamed.
How did you come up with the name The Boogeyman Chronicles?
In my household, anytime something spooky or even just something weird that you couldn't, there was a knock at the door and there was no one there, or the phone rang and no one was there, my dad would always say, oh, the boogeyman's here. The boogeyman's here, And so to me, the boogeyman, it kind of encapsulates anything spooky, scary, anything that's, after you and stuff like that. So, the boogeyman to me is something different to someone else. But to me, it was just like a nice blanket umbrella term.
Okay. So yeah, for some people it might be a shadow entity. For some it might be some kind of elemental that they have an interaction with. I see. Okay, so what is the scariest thing that actually ever happened to you personally?
There's quite a few. I have like a top 5. But
okay, let's start with that.
Yeah, there's quite a few things, but one of the scariest things that kind of falls out of the realm of people are like, well, what was that? I don't know. I still don't know to this day. Many scary encounters, but this one, I was probably about 8 years old. I was in 3rd grade. And I remember I was living at this time. I was living with my dad and his second wife, my first stepmom. He's been married a lot. And I remember I was really literally just tormented all night by something. There was something in this apartment that just loved to pick on me. And so all night long, the bed would be bumped, kicked. Something with long fingernails would grab at my feet all night. The covers would be ripped off the bed. I would hear whispers. I would hear people talking. I would hear weird sounds. I would feel whispering in my ear, and I could feel the breath on my face. I could feel something sit down on the bed. Or lay down on the bed. You know what I mean? Just constant creepiness all throughout the night. Finally, one night, I remember I just couldn't take it anymore. I was like, well, that's it. I'm not staying in here. And I think I got really, truly spooked by something. And I said, that's it. I'm done. I'm not going to stay in the bedroom. So I went out in the living room, where the living room and the couch was here. And, my parents' bedroom was right there. So I remember thinking, okay, if something really scary happens, I'm running in there. And so I remember I sat on the couch, and I really wasn't supposed to do this. I wasn't supposed to wake them up. I wasn't supposed to, because I did this throughout the whole, every single night. I was there from 2 years old to 8, or 9 years old. So, every single night this happened. And so they finally like forbade me to come and get them if I got scared. So I was scared to get them, but yet I didn't know what to do. And I was terrified. So I remember I got on the couch. It was probably about 5:30, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And I remember I lay down, I barely dozed off. And then all of a sudden, something jumped on me. And it was maybe 2 or 3 feet tall. It was impish. And this thing jumped on me. I could feel its weight. I'm a little kid. I'm a scrawny little kid, and this thing jumped on me. I could feel its weight. I had a hand. I could feel a hand over my nose and mouth, so I couldn't breathe or scream. I had a hand over my eyes, but yet I could see beneath, like underneath the hand. And I was expecting to see a body. When I opened my eyes, there was nothing there. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it, feel the weight. I also felt something holding my arms down right here. And I remember just trying to scream, trying to breathe, freaking out, like, what the hell is on me? And whatever it was on me was hissing in my face. I could feel it, just hissing in my face. And I remember just losing my crap. I didn't know what was going on. And I was trying to breathe. I was trying to scream. This went on for several seconds, felt like an eternity. And I remember something in my head. I don't know still to this day why I heard this, but something said, grab it by its arms and throw it down. And I was like, okay, and I was running out of air at this point. So I remember I just instinctively reached up, and I could feel these little spindly arms in my hands. And I felt the arms, and I went, oh, I got it. And then I remember I threw this thing down. I pulled it off of me and threw it down. And as I did, I could hear this thing snarling and as it scampered away. But again, I couldn't see it. So there was enough light in the room to where I could see something if it was there, and I could not see this thing. I looked everywhere. I was like, where is it going to come back? What's happening? And I'm sitting there just gasping for air, freaking out, scared. I don't know if I'm scared to go in there and tell them I need help. I didn't know what to do. So I remember just looking all around, didn't see it, didn't hear it. But I remember I sat there for the rest of the night until about 7-8 o'clock. And I just kind of hugged my knees and just kind of looked around and just kind of kept my eyes open. And then when I heard their alarm go off, I knew it was time to get up. So I just got up and went and got ready for school.
How old were you?
I was about 8.
About 8.
Yeah.
I think that there's a placebo effect, perhaps, that you believed enough, right? Like when a priest, does an exorcism, that there has to be a belief there that it's going to work. Otherwise, it wouldn't work. Not that I totally subscribe to exorcisms, but theoretically. And so it sounds like to me that you believed in that moment, whatever that voice was in your head, it created enough belief that when you went to grab this thing, it's like you somehow knew where to grab and make it a motion, take an action, and just the belief in the action itself was the repellent to this entity. Because up until that point, even though it's a voice in your head, it sounds to me like it was almost like confirming to you, like, yeah, this is happening right now. No, do something about it. Mm-hmm. And then maybe in that moment you were like, okay, I'm not crazy. Something's happening to me. And you took action.
Yeah. Again, I don't even know how I knew to grab it. I just said, grab it by its arms. Okay. And I grabbed it. And I remember being really shocked that I actually felt something in my hands. I thought I was crazy. Up until that point when I felt the arms, I thought, okay, I'm crazy. Something's happening. Well, my brain, this happened so fast that my brain was just struggling to, figure out what was going on. And again, I couldn't breathe. I couldn't scream. I felt literal hands over my mouth and nose and my eyes. Again, I don't know.
Do you remember any more details? Was it hairy? You said scrawny.
Scrawny, yeah, it was like the scrawny little, and I remember it was maybe all of 2 or 3 feet tall, but I remember it was hissing in my face. It was viciously like a cornered animal, like a possum, when they just kind of hiss, and this thing was in my face, and I remember I could feel the breath on my face, and it was quite terrifying. So, yeah.
Now, it's been many years since you had experiences. What's with your family, and their experiences? Like, what's their history? How did all? Do you think there's a cultivation of paranormal energy around the family? Because you're sensitive.
Well, I know my mother and I are both autistic and we have ADHD, and there is a definite correlation between, and not all autistics are psychic and what have you, but a lot of us are. And so my mother and I were extra, extra, extra sensitive, and we just, wherever we were, if there was something going on, we picked up on it. My dad, on the other hand, I don't know. I mean, he has ADHD too, so I don't really know what the deal is with him, but he wasn't really sensitive, I would say, like my mother and I, like an empath kind of medium sensitivity, but he did have some encounters. And I remember when I was a little kid, he kept telling me I was crazy until stuff started happening to him, and then he changed his story. But he doesn't talk about it much. That's the funny thing. You have to kind of pull these things out of him, and he finally admits to it. Like, yeah, something happened to me. But yeah, he changed his tune when stuff started to happen to him.
What was your mother like, using her abilities?
My mother was absolutely terrifying. She was so accurate. She would walk up to people in the grocery store and say, blah, 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 whatever, whatever. Because she would tell me, she would say, I think I need to tell that person something. And I was like, well, go tell them. And she was like, okay, they're going to think I'm crazy. And I said, who cares? Just go tell them. If they need a word, they need something encouraging or, some sort of confirmation, go tell them, So she would go over to people in the grocery store, any kind of store. And she would say, I think I need to tell you something. And she would start telling them, and the person would be like, oh my God, how do you know that? When I was really little, she would have readings. She would conduct readings in our house. I was banished to the back bedroom because I was a little kid. I, probably would have made a, big noise, big kerfuffle. But, she banished me to the back bedroom. It was bedtime anyway. But, I still remember kind of not really knowing what mom did. What is mom? What is a psychic? I had no idea. So I remember I used to poke my head out and I used to watch her give readings to these people. And the person would be sitting in a chair. She'd be sitting on the couch. And my mom sometimes would do psychometry where she would hold an object and she would, I could see her sitting there, hold the object, and she would, rub it. And she would say, oh yeah, this is happening and blah, 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 and she would tell this person, and the person would practically fall off their chair. They would be like, oh my God, how do you know that? Nobody else knows that. One encounter that I was about 6 years old, and I finally realized, oh, that's what mom's doing, because my dad was in law enforcement. So by the time I was about 6 years, I was a pretty worldly 6 years old. So I was 6 years old, and I started to this fear came over me about my dad possibly dying because of his job. I realized, oh my God, when you see cops on TV, you're like, oh, that's my dad does that. And you realize, oh my God, my dad could die. So I started to kind of get tormented by this weird thing that just kind of jumped on me and would not let me rest. And I remember every single night for 2 straight weeks, I had the same reoccurring dream. And the dream was, remember when we had actual photographs, on paper, we would actually look at them.
Some of us still have, some have those.
I have a big box of them, but I'm a tech dinosaur. So I don't, I have pictures on my phone, but yet I still got the big box of family photos. So, my hair's all crazy, but, so when I was about 6 years old, the dream was, I was standing there holding a picture of my father's tombstone, and it showed his name, and there's really thick green grass around the tombstone. And then I would wake up in a sweat and a fright and a terror. And I remember just breathing, just sweating and crying and freaking out. And so every single night for 2 weeks, I had this dream. and I couldn't shake it. I don't know what, and I was starting to dread going to sleep because I knew I was going to have this dream. And I remember not telling anybody. For some reason, I was really scared. I thought, people are going to laugh at me. I better not say anything. So I didn't say anything to anybody. I just kept it to myself. And I remember one night, after about 2 weeks of this, one night, my mother, we were sitting at the dinner table, and she just kind of was looking at me like this. She's giving me that look, and I was like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. She knows something. I wasn't a sneaky kid, but you know what I mean? I was just kind of like, oh great. And I remember she just looked at me so matter-of-factly, and she just said, the last 2 weeks you've been having dreams of your dad dying. And she said, the dream is you're looking at a picture, you're looking at a photograph, and of your dad's tombstone, and there's really green grass around it. She said, you've been having this dream for every single night for the last 2 weeks. And I, as a 6-year-old, I almost fell out of my chair, and I went, oh, that's what mom does. Okay, now I get it, And from then on, she always knew, always when I was worrying, she would scream across the house, stop worrying, and I would be like, and I would try to fool her. I'm so dumb. I would try to fool her. I'd be like, I'm not worrying. And she'd be like, yeah, right. You're worried about this. And she would tell me exactly what I was worried about. And I was like, well, crap, and like, again, I wasn't a sneaky kid. I wasn't sneaking out to meet boys, and, I wasn't, doing drugs or nothing like that. I wasn't a sneaky kid, but yet every single thing I did or thought or whatever, she just picked up on it. She was so sensitive. And yeah, it was pretty terrifying at times living with her. So
that's I guess that's the moment where you start to put things together, because you realize your mother has this ability. You have these early memories of paranormal experiences. How many more years do you go trying to accept that this is what your family is capable of, and what you're capable of?
Maybe I'm just a real dumb kid, a real dumb person. I don't know, but it took me a little while before I finally figured out what the hell was going on. Because when I was a kid, I'm kind of older. So, in the late 70s, early 80s, we didn't have podcasts. We didn't even talk about the paranormal, really, not too much. And my mom was the kind of person where she did her thing, but she never took out tarot cards and taught me how to read them. She never did tarot cards. That wasn't her thing. But she didn't really expose me to it. So I didn't really put two and two together and realize, okay, this scary world that I'm living in where things are attacking me at night, it's the same world that mom is doing her media, it's the paranormal world. I didn't know nothing about that. So, and again,
two separate things happening.
I had no idea. So I just kept trying to just live my life, get, past a lot of stuff. My dad was kind of abusive. He would marry abusive women. So I was just trying to survive. I was just trying to survive day to day. And then all of this paranormal stuff just kept flooding in on top of what I was already going through. So I was just kind of like, oh my God. So it wasn't until about, I'd say 8 or 9 when I started to go, okay, I think we started to talk about ghosts more. Around the mid 80s was when, Ghostbusters came out, and we were all starting to kind of sort of talk about the paranormal more, a little bit more. And I remember I went to the library with my stepmom, the one that told me that, none of this was real. I went to her, I found a book about the occult or ghosts or something. And I remember I saw like, some blurry picture of a ghost. And I ran over and I told her, I said, I think this is what I'm going through. Please believe me, please help me. And she just immediately dismissed me. No, I don't believe in that. There's no such thing. You're imagining things. And that just killed me right there, because, the adult's supposed to protect the kid, and she wasn't helping me. So, but I started to clue in around then, like, okay, there's something evil here. Before I was like, what the hell's happening? Now I'm just kind of like, okay, finally, when I was about 14, 15 years old, my mom had become a Christian at that point. And then I kind of reluctantly became a Christian too. And I was just kind of in this world, and you can't be in a fundamentalist Christian-y kind of churchy, setting without hearing about demons and angels and this and that. And then all of a sudden it started to kind of really open my eyes, and I went, oh my gosh. And then, of course, the X-Files was coming out right around then. And it was just like, oh, I'm psychic. I'm sensitive. What? And I started to kind of clue in, and I started to realize, wait a minute, Mom, you and I are the same. I was really I was pretty chuffed to kind of realize, oh, wait, I can kind of do what Mom does, So it was around
we have a question from Mikey Thompson on Facebook. I hate to ask such a personal question, but did you notice an increase in activity after your parents' separation?
My parents separated very soon after I was born. So I don't really know, because I was so young. I was just a tiny baby. I was maybe no more than a few weeks old when my mother found out some pretty bad stuff about my dad, and then she was like, "That's it. I want a divorce." So he left, and I don't really think so. I mean, people say sometimes when there's a lot of tumult within the family unit that it kind of increases the paranormal activity. I never really noticed that, because the paranormal activity, whether it was good times, bad times, it was just always there.
Right. I was just speaking to Mariah Canal, and we were talking about kind of, injecting the mind, stimulating the mind for psychic ability, and we were kind of joking around about coffee being a catalyst for that. But I think the idea is that any sort of intense situation, there's any number of compounds that are, flooding through our body and into the brain, that I would imagine it's kind of like when you get those goosebumpy feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think your fear can actually increase your ability to sense, rather than suppress it, because if it is like another sense and your instinct is, I need to know what's going on around me, maybe it kicks in and it's stronger.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I was just talking to a friend of mine, and he told me, he said, something. Maybe there's a correlation too between. There's a correlation between kids that have been abused, and so they have a heightened, that fight, flight, or freeze. You're kind of stuck in that mode, and you're hyper vigilant, and maybe that even draws stuff to you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you are going through some kind of trauma in your life, and especially, if you lose someone, I wonder, do you ever feel like you have an increase of sensitivity? Because maybe there's a part of you that is kind of reaching out.
I don't know, because in my own life, when I have lost someone, again, my life is constantly, the paranormal is just constantly there. I don't really notice an increase in activity. I did notice that after one of my relatives passed away that I was very close to, I ended up having really good luck, for lack of a better word. That was the only sort of increase that I ever noticed when I lost someone. It was very strange. I was, this person had passed away. It just tore my soul out, and I was just devastated. But for some reason, after that, anytime I wanted something, thought of something, wished for something, it was right at my doorstep within just days or hours. It was weird. So,
yeah. It was like a phase where you were really keyed in.
Yeah, there was a phase where, I mean, I felt like I was kind of plugged into something. And the minute I because I was staying at a place, I had just moved to LA, and I was staying at this kind of crappy place, and I was looking at the toilet, and I remember thinking, gosh, that toilet's really awful looking, and I really need to get I need to get a toilet brush, and I need to get a new toilet seat, and I need some cleaners, and I need this and that. And then all of a sudden, within an hour, the landlord shows up with everything that I had just thought about.
We have a question from Genghis Khan. Does MG Stevens have a view on if all people have this ability?
I do. I believe everybody is, I hate to use this word, psychic or sensitive, for lack of a better term. I believe it's something kind of in our lizard brain, where we, it's that gut feeling where you're the caveman, you know what I mean? We're going back to that time, Neanderthals, and they have to be hyper aware of their surroundings, otherwise they're going to get eaten by saber-tooth tiger or something, whatever. But I think it's really in us. I think when someone says, oh, I get a gut feeling about that, I feel something. I've had people that swore they weren't psychic or sensitive at all, and then they start talking to me because they're not really exposed to it. They're not like I was, where they, I was just super sensitive. So I had this girl tell me one time, she goes, oh, I'm not really sensitive or psychic or anything. I really wish I was. And then all of a sudden she started to proceed to tell me about all the things that she would pick up from people. She was a really pretty girl. And she would say, yeah, sometimes when these guys come, because we were working at like a commissary, and she said, yeah, there was times when, these guys come to me and I know exactly what they're like thinking dirty thoughts. She goes, I know exactly what they're thinking. And then she proceeded to tell me other things. And I said, okay, so see that right there, you are sensitive. But you don't even know it. You don't even know that that's what you're sensing. So there's a lot of people out there that pick up on a lot of stuff and they're very sensitive, but they have no clue that they are. It's from, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, I believe everybody has that sense. And some people know it's super, it's turned up to 11, and other people, it's kind of just every once in a while they'll pick up on something, but they don't really pay attention to it. They don't go, oh, that's my antenna, like I just call it an antenna. Everyone has an antenna. Sometimes, like I said, turn up to 11, like me. And some people just every once in a while, they'll pick up the passing thing and they're like, I knew that guy was weird, or I knew something wasn't right about that. Or I knew those people were fighting. When someone walks into a room and, two people, you just get a sense that they're not happy. They just got into an argument or something. You get that weird tingly feeling like, I don't want to be in here. And you just know something's been up. I think because we're electrical, we put out a lot of static energy in a way,
Well, it's all electromagnetic energy anyway, in various forms all around us, passing through our bodies, running through our bodies, invisible and otherwise. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. You've had a lot of strange experiences. What's the one thing that had happened to you that really shocked you? Just took you by surprise?
A lot of stuff. The one thing that really took me by surprise that comes to mind when I was about 14 years old, and I would live with my dad and his very abusive wife. I then moved to my mom's. I was living with my mom's at this point. And this is when I really started to clue in, like, oh, I'm psychic, sensitive, something. But I remember I was out in the backyard. We were sitting on the back step. And I remember I was talking to my mom about just some various thing. All of a sudden, I get this rush of fear. I see an ambulance and I see my dad's face. Now, I immediately think, oh my God, my dad's in trouble, because I can't shake this fear. It rushed into every cell of my being. I panicked. I did not know what the hell was happening. And I remember I was out of my mind at this point. I was so terrified. And I remember screaming because I kept seeing the same vision. Ambulance, dad, ambulance, dad, ambulance, dad. And I remember just screaming, and I said, Mom, call dad, there's something wrong. And she freaked out. She thought I was having a panic attack, and she was trying to calm me down. And I said, no. I'm not freaking out. No, I'm feeling something. Please call dad. So my dad used to work downtown in an office building. So she went and called him. And as soon as she called and said, where's so-and-so, his coworker freaked out and hung up the phone. And she got so pissed off. She called me. She goes, don't you dare hang up on me. And she's like, where is so-and-so? And then as soon as this guy he took like a breath, and he goes, he just left not 5 minutes ago. He just got a phone call that his wife got into a car accident and she might not make it. So yeah, I just stood there just kind of like, what? I felt my father's fear. And I saw dad's face. I saw the ambulance. I knew something wasn't right. So that really took me back.
What is more frequent, when you have a sensation of something isn't right, something's wrong, or a positive vibe or message?
That's hard to say, because I think I think maybe I pay attention more to the negative stuff, because the negative stuff, when it comes up, it really comes up. It's like, okay, you're gonna, this person's talking about you, this person is plotting, this person is doing something, or oh, this thing that you've been wanting to happen is not going to happen, or something's gonna, something is, you get that creeped out feeling, and you're like, oh crap, something's not right. Sometimes you get good feelings, but for some reason, I guess you tend to freak out about the bad ones more. But yeah, every once in a while I go, oh, I'm going to hear from so-and-so. I'm going to hear from them. I'm going to get a text from them. And then about 10 minutes later, the text comes in. That's something positive, and then all of a sudden there's times when it's just like, oh, that person's talking about me. That person is smiling at me, but they're talking about me. And then sure enough, you find out that, yeah, that person's been spreading rumors, and you're like, do it. Yeah.
I want to know, did your friend ever confront those guys and tell them what they were thinking?
I don't think so. She was awfully nice, so I don't think she did. She just kind of smiled and dealt with it, But yeah, she, I've met a lot of people like her that were like, oh, I'm so not psychic. I, and then all of a sudden they go, well, there was that one time, or you know what? Every time I get around this one guy or person, I don't like him. And then all of a sudden they find out that the guy was a weirdo or something, something wasn't right, or they kept getting rushes of a feeling about something. And then they ended up being right. And I said, that right there is your psychic ability, your sensitivity, your antenna, whatever you want to call it. We have that in us.
Right, because you have to, I guess, trust it. And for her, not believing that she actually had it, she didn't feel confident enough to say to somebody, hey, this is what I think I heard you think. But if you can do that, it's very powerful. And you would probably have an immediate convert. I have a friend of mine who, she's sensitive and she's had some experiences like that. And she's told strangers, something's coming through, and it floors them. It's emotional. It's shocking. And for me, that is undeniable proof that there is another something. Do you think the other something on the other side is a spirit world? Is it a projection of our own consciousnesses? What's your sense of what's out there?
It's so hard to really, because again, I don't have all the answers, but my theory is that I always liken the spirit realm, and I always kind of describe it in this way. It's almost like Scrooge, and how the ghost of Christmas past was taking him into different homes, and how he could see and hear everyone, but they couldn't see and hear him. And that's how I feel. I feel like the spirit realm, I really feel like it's all around us. You know what I mean? At least it's always been that way for me. I feel like we live in this realm, and you read about cats, how they have that certain vision where they can actually see ghosts. And they can actually see on different, frequencies, or whatever you want to call it. And so we don't have that vision, or some of us do, and so I think stuff is happening all around us. And I just think that we don't really pay attention, or we're not sensitive enough to pick up on those things. But some of us are. I when I was a kid and growing up, I never saw anything. I felt it. I went like this, and I could feel something come into the room. You know what I mean? I knew something was standing there just looking at me. So you know what I mean? I think the spirit realm, paranormal world, the veil, whatever you want to call it, is always happening around us. And then for some reason we intersect with something at a particular time.
Okay, we'll come back on the other side of this break with M.G. Stevens, author of the Boogeyman Chronicles, to talk about PTSD and the paranormal, because that is a subject that MG is very passionate about, and I don't think we've talked enough about. We certainly have covered it, particularly with UFO alleged abductee experiencers, but MG covers really the full gamut of the paranormal, and her own personal experiences as well. So she has a point of view in this regard. So this is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on Paranormal Pop YouTube channel, rebroadcast on KUNXDB. That's UNXDB.com. All right, so we will see you on the inverted upside down to get further down the rabbit hole.
race to find the future. Convinced of efforts to deceive.
This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth? Hey all, Paranormal Now will be syndicated on the UnX network, the new mainstream, where you can find your favorite hosts and shows on the cutting edge of ufological and paranormal news and topics. Listen for Paranormal Now rebroadcast on the X at 2 a.m. EST Fridays, 11 p.m. PST Thursdays at unxnetwork.com. Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your grateful host. Music taking us out of the break is by Septembrio. If you want to find out more about Septembrio, you can go to their website, septembrio, spelled with a y.com. My guest is M.G. Stevens, the author of the Boogeyman Chronicles, and she's also host of her own podcast, which you can check out as well.
And host.
Yes, and just a general host of all things paranormal. And so PTSD and the paranormal, I think it could be problematic for a lot of people, because when they think about PTSD, they're thinking about traditional psychology and a more stringent scientific approach to the mind and to dealing with trauma. And then, we put that into the category of paranormal, treating the paranormal like it's real. Isn't that cause for possible confusion, or is it a saving grace?
Well, in my opinion, paranormal PTSD is a real thing. Whether or not, because I have complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and so I deal with that. And I was engaged to a combat vet, and he had PTSD, so I know it from that angle as well. And my father had PTSD, so it's different things for different people. Having to do with the trauma. What trauma did you have, and how is your brain trying to process that? To me, when I say paranormal PTSD, I'm talking about. I'll give you an example, like Terry Lovelace. He was my first guest, and I was listening to all these podcasts, and I kept hearing the same thing in these these adults talking about what they went through, mostly as a kid, but even now as an adult, when they went through stuff, it really had a prolonged effect. It wasn't just I saw something, or I went through something, and that was it. They tend to, not everybody, but they tend to try to develop like coping mechanisms for that fright that came at them, that kind of imprinted itself on them. And now they're just trying to deal with it. And I still know people who are adults and like Terry Lovelace, where they have to sleep with the light on. Poor Terry can't even walk through an open field because of what he went through at Devil's Den. And I know lots of other people, they have to put something, because, when they were a kid, a shadow man would come out of the closet. And so they would have to put something in front of the door. And they still do that at 40, 50 years old. Terry's in his 70s, and he's, 60, 70. So he's still trying to cope with what he went through. So to me, paranormal PTSD is whether or not you want to say it's real, this person experienced a trauma and now they're trying to cope with it. Now they're just trying to live, and that thing keeps coming back of the, the shadow man's coming out of the closet. What if it happens again? Let me put something in front of that so the door can't come open. I know people that have to sleep with their door wide open, and they put something heavy in front of it because something, would slam their door shut when they were a kid or teenager and would scare the crap out of them. And, they now have to put something very heavy in front of that door to make sure that something doesn't slam the door shut. Again, sleeping with the light on. When I went through I went through a particular incident in Los Angeles, I would say around 2012, 2013. And I slept with the light on for a few nights. You know what I mean? It was really traumatizing. Sleep with one eye open. Yes, absolutely. You whether or not, the skeptics are going to say what they want to say. Again, we're not trying to prove anything to anybody, but I have, talked to quite a few people, have heard many stories of people who are still, after years of the actual incident, they are still trying to cope and make sense and, have coping mechanisms for what they experienced then. So to me, paranormal PTSD is a very real thing.
How do you deal with it? Do you deal with it any differently than you do other trauma?
I don't know. And that's the thing. That's the thing that's really frustrating, because as I was talking to Terry, he was like, yeah, I went to see a psychiatrist, and what was I going to tell her? I was abducted by aliens. She would be like, okay, and so, how do you bring that up? I see a therapist. A lot of people do, we're all trying to get our mental health, in order here. And, how do you bring this up? And I realized, okay, I talked to my therapist about certain things, but I don't dare bring up the paranormal because I know she's not going to accept it. They're taught that if someone brings up the paranormal, this world doesn't exist. So if they're bringing it up, hallucinations,
Yeah, but then how can you deal with psychology, your own trauma, if you're kind of leaving out some of those stories in therapy?
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. We need to start normalizing paranormal encounters and having therapists, if they choose to go into that or not. They might be skeptic, they might not, I don't know. But like someone like John Mack, you have someone who is trained, but also knows that there's something going on here, and, allow people to talk about it and do whatever, hypnosis, EMDR, whatever it is, you know what I mean? We need to start addressing it. That's why I'm being so vocal. I don't normally get myself out there, but I kept seeing this. I kept seeing these poor, people who have been struggling with paranormal PTSD. They had either one encounter or a lifetime of encounters or several, whatever, and they're still struggling to cope. They're still sleeping with the light on, and you know what I mean? And I'm not knocking that, because I got to sleep with the nightlight on. I gotta be able to see, what's going on. But, it's something that needs to be addressed. I really hope that there is an organization, somebody starts something, there's therapists that have been clinically, trained, but at the same time, they do believe in the paranormal, or they believe at least these people have experienced something, and they will hopefully start counseling people and start talking about it. We need to start talking about it. That's why I'm talking about it now. We need to start normalizing paranormal encounters and realizing that whether or not you believe this person went through anything, they believe they went through something and they're now struggling. And how do we address that? How do we help people?
You also bring up a really good question. And I'm asking you and anyone out there listening, if you are aware of someone, please let me know. Who is the John Mack of our age? Who is the actively working therapist or hypnotherapist, with a degree in psychology that is really incorporating the paranormal into their therapies, accepting it as something that is real? Is there anyone right now that you can think of?
I don't really know of anyone. Terry Lovelace did mention something to me, and I have yet to really research it. But I think there is a group of psychiatrists that are working with people mostly for UFO encounters. I think it's what is it called? It's like Opus or something, or there's some, it starts with an O. Someone out there will know. Please
OVNI?
put Abby. Yes, something like that. But yeah, it's he did mention that to me, and that made me feel a little bit better. But I feel like it's just not enough. We need to, really start talking more about it.
Yeah, there's so many paranormal books out there, but it's been a long time since I've seen something, like, a John Mack, book that, really, or Bud Hopkins,
Mm-hmm.
in that, although he was an artist, turned a hypnotherapist, but and he didn't have that degree in psychology that Mac had, and the tenure Mac had at a university level. But there was some real study there, and I'd like to see more of that in the paranormal world, not just alien abductees, but people who have strange encounters, paranormal encounters that are often traumatizing as well. And we have a question from Mariah Canal. She's a friend of mine. Hey, Mariah, how are you? She is a psychic medium, and her question is, have you ever worked with transpersonal psychologists?
I haven't. I didn't even really know that was a thing. I don't even know what that is. Again, I'm approaching this from my own standpoint, going, we need to talk about this. This is a thing. This is an area that's not looked at, that's, discriminated against and prejudice. And we need to start talking about this. So again, it's like, if someone knows of something, please, put it in the comments, start talking about it, because if all of us kind of get together and go like, yeah, you know what, there is something about this, and we start talking about it, then people can get help,
Yeah. We all do that, right? We all have experiences that we feel like we need to share. When are there any experiences that you had that you've been able to work through?
Not
The trauma.
really. Again, I'm one of them. I'm a paranormal PTSD sufferer. You know what I mean? I had a lifetime, and writing this book was a little bit of a form of therapy, because I had tucked a lot of stuff away. I had told myself, oh, yeah, you just imagine that, just to kind of cope and get through life. When you're a little kid, or an adult, like even this latest encounter that I had a few years back. I was struggling then to really understand it, because again, I was always told, you're imagining things, don't, and just to kind of get through it, I was just like, okay, it's not happening. I'm not going to think about this. And then it kind of came at me. So I am one of those people that's like, hey, can I talk to somebody? Because I'm kind of going through stuff too,
So are you still going through things now? Are you having experiences?
Not right now, thankfully. I mean, there is that normal day-to-day stuff that you feel and you pick up, and I know who's going to call me, I know who's going to email, I know when something's going to happen or not, or blah blah blah. There's that happening, but nothing malicious, thankfully. And two, every once in a while you get I think you get a passerby, you get something that kind of comes into your space, and you're like, get out of here. Now I've got balls, I guess you would say. I'm a little bit tougher when it comes to paranormal stuff, because I've seen so much. I've grown up. I know how to deal with those things now, so they don't scare me like they used to. I used to be a total scaredy cat, but now I know to kind of how to address these things if they come at me. I'm really not all that phased all that much, unless it's something really intense. But the latest encounter that I had was in 2012, 13. And that really threw me for a loop. But, the very last really sort of intense encounter that I had was very brief. It was for a moment. I was actually reading, I just talked to Andrea Perrin, and I was talking to her because I was talking to Keith Johnson, who is a demonologist, from TAPS. And so I was talking to them, and I just happened to get Andrea's book. So I was reading House of Darkness has House of Light. And then all of a sudden I get to the part where we're really talking about Bathsheba. And I'm sitting on the couch, and all of a sudden I hear this weird sound coming from the kitchen. And it's this sighing sound. It's, it's this weird female sighing. And I'm like, what is that? And we have chickens out in another yard over here. So I'm looking everywhere. I'm looking outside. I'm like, who is doing that? And it was at nighttime. So everything was very quiet. There was no TVs on. There was nothing going on. It was dead quiet, but I kept hearing this weird sighing sound, and I was hoping it was the fridge. I was hoping it was something. So I remember I inched my way to the kitchen, and I heard it coming from the kitchen, and I thought, crap, that ain't the fridge. And so I remember I kind of stood there in the I confronted it, because what am I going to do? And I confronted it, and I said, okay, you got my attention. What do you want? And it stopped just like that. So don't know.
What is a neurodivergent?
Neurodivergent is someone who is autistic, ADHD, dyspraxia, epilepsy, someone who is just not neurotypical. We're neurodivergent. We're wired differently.
How does that play into the paranormal? You think, I know you touched on this earlier, but do you think that that is indeed how you have these abilities, or are you not unsure about that and you're still looking into it?
I am, on the fence. I am still really looking into it. The evidence is very compelling. There is a thing called RCCX theory. If you Google it, it's this interesting thing where certain people have Ehlers-Danlos, autism, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue. Like we all have like a very certain set of symptoms. And a lot of those people tend to be, again, for lack of a better word, psychic, sensitive. It was very strong in my mother and I. And I've also talked to quite a few other neurodivergent people, whether they were autistic, ADHD, or both. And they all told me I've always had some sort of weird sensitivity. I always knew things. I could, just strange things. Like I could always guess that the gender of someone's baby before they were born. Or I was always highly sensitive, or the paranormal followed me, or I had precognitive dreams, or I had dreams. Like one of my friends had a dream about Princess Diana dying in a car accident before it actually happened. And I just talked to another possible neurodivergent guy that I did a podcast with, and he told me, he said, I've had a lot of, I think I'm autistic, and I've had a lot of brushes with the paranormal, and he's got a podcast. So I spoke with Kathleen Martin. She was actually a guest on my own podcast. The sound didn't record, so like the audio didn't record, so it was like such a great interview, but we have to do it over again. But I was very curious because she worked with MUFON, and she was rattling off different, she's such a great researcher, and she was rattling off different percentages of experiencers, people who experience, so many people are male, so many people are this, a certain percentage of this and that. And I said, wait a minute, I just got to ask you one question. How many people who are experiencers just happen to be neurodivergent? And she said, oh, a good 86%. And I remember that's a pretty decent number. So, and I just kind of, poked around on some of the neurodivergent groups on Facebook, and just kind of said, who here has had paranormal encounters, ESP, that kind of thing. And, unbelievable number of people just wrote in and said, oh yeah, me, I've always had that. So it's very interesting. And also Rudy Simone, who is an autistic author, she hinted in her book, Asper Girls, she hinted, just kind of touched on it, that a lot of autistic women happen to be psychic. And so she kind of hit on that a bit, but there is a definite correlation, and that's another book that I'm starting to write now. So if you are neurodivergent, or you think you might be neurodivergent, and you've had either like the little sort of just knowings of things, or full on paranormal, or a full on psychic, contact me. I would love to talk to you and get more information on it.
It sounds to me like a lot of your experiences are just day-to-day occurrences, and it just sort of happens as a psychic medium. But do you employ your skills with purpose?
I do. I'm just, because there's times in my life where I just kind of don't really want to deal with it. I'm going through too much, and it's too much of a drain, because it does drain you a bit. And so I used to do paranormal investigations with my mother. We kind of worked as a team. because we were so sensitive, especially together. So in my teens and 20s, we used to do that. And then throughout my adult life, without her, I will just, be talking to someone. Someone's like, oh gosh, can you do like a quick reading for me? I'm more of a medium. So I work with, people, but I can also work with live people too. As long as you give me a picture of their eyes, I can see their eyes. I can actually read them. So I'll sit there with a person and tell them, yeah, okay, this person's doing this and the blah, 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 whatever. Or if they've passed on, I give them the message that person wants to give them, or confirm, this person's like, I think my mother or father, whoever, grandpa, grandma is reaching out to me, and are they, and so I was, able to help them with that.
Where do you see yourself going as a researcher and psychic medium? What's the hope for you?
Again, a lot of things. I want to normalize paranormal encounters. I want more people talking, more people being less scared, less ashamed. I want to write more books and open people's minds and say, hey, look, there is a correlation between neurodivergence and ESP. I don't have all the answers. No one does, but let's get talking about these things. Let's bring this stuff out and stop, worrying about what people think. Let's stop worrying, people are scared to talk. Let's stop being scared. Let's start talking.
Do you believe that cryptids, as they're reported, that they're physical beings of some sort, or do you think that they are non-physical?
That is so hard to really put your finger on, because I personally have never had a cryptid encounter. So I don't really know. But I mean, you hear stories where this thing was full on physical. Or, I mean, you heard that story about Terry Sherman, how he and his son, I think, were on the Skinwalker Ranch doing their thing, with the cattle, and they saw a Bigfoot. And the Bigfoot was running, and all of a sudden it leaped into something that they couldn't see, but it disappeared. Again, indigenous cultures, the Bigfoots, Sasquatches are, in some cultures, in some tribes, is a friendly, they kind of keep their distance, but it's kind of friendly. And then other tribes, it's a very malicious spirit. So it's so hard to really put your finger on. And of course, we're just now starting to go, oh, wait a minute, there's a connection between UFOs and Bigfoots. I mean, I think I even heard a story of someone being on a craft and seeing a Bigfoot. So I don't even know about that.
Well, I know Jane Goodall would like to believe in Bigfoot, for Bigfoot to be real. And she's certainly open to the idea of it. People have told her stories. So I think it's interesting that someone of her stature would entertain the idea that there is a real, hominid out there that we have yet to discover. Like, the fact that she even thinks that's possible, I think, is amazing. And this is from an interview from just 2 or 3 years ago. When people talk to you on your show about seeing UFOs, is there a correlation between UFOs and other paranormal experiences?
I mean, from all the things that I've heard, definitely. I mean, all you got to do is read Kathleen Martin or listen to her podcast, because she's a frequent visitor to a lot of podcasts talking about her books and everything. And she's had a lifetime. I wasn't really aware of how much stuff that she had actually been through, and her family too. As not just her Aunt Betty and Uncle Barney, right. It was, everybody in the family, her parents, and she discussed about, and she discussed about, how they would, maybe have an encounter. They would see something like a UFO, and then all of a sudden there's a strange phenomena when you have interactions with UFOs where it feels like a cat is walking on the bed. You can feel something walking, and there's no cat, but you can feel something walking on the bed. And of course we hear about the Skinwalker Ranch, where they had, clearly these orbs, and they saw craft, and then they had all these poltergeist activities, and same thing with the Bradshaw Ranch. So yeah, I mean, there's definitely something. I mean, you have to realize if they can manipulate time and space and do all this stuff, they can hide your hairbrush in the fridge if they want. You know what I mean? They could unpack as you unpack your groceries, you go into the next room, and then all of a sudden you come back and they're packed. I think there is definitely something to it. Again, I don't have all the answers. I wish I did, but my feeling is there's definitely a connection.
The support groups have been around for decades now, and they're extremely powerful. And it doesn't work for everybody, but they function without psychologists. And they have built a structure and a system, steps to follow, and it works for a lot of people. Do you feel like that's something that you're called to help develop? Or I know that there's, like, for instance, I forget her name, Charlotte, it's not coming to me now, but she created a 13 step addiction recovery from a Wiccan point of view, instead of like the traditional Alcoholics Anonymous. She created her own kind of system. For you, do you think there's a system waiting to be developed for paranormal PTSD?
I think so. Yeah. And I would like to, again, I wouldn't really know where to start with this whole thing. To me, I usually get the sort of beginning general idea and say, hey, can someone come up with this? So I'd be more than happy to work with someone and talk with them and start to kind of address those things, because again, the paranormal is different for every person. It might just be a shadow person, or so you might be like me, where I've had lots of different kinds of encounters. So how do you go about addressing that? But I think that like you said, the support group, people coming together, like-minded, supporting you and saying, hey, look, I don't know what you went through, but I know you went through something and you're clearly traumatized by it. So let's talk, let's band together, and let's share our experiences so that we can start healing, or at least stop doubting ourselves, stop negating what we saw.
What about you spiritually? How do you deal with all of these psychic experiences, entities, and reconcile that with your own belief system?
That's kind of an interesting question, because I'm not a churchy person. I'm not religious, but yet I still believe that there's a God, and I still believe, when I was in church, if you want to make something scary go away, you say in the name of Jesus. So I still use that if I need to, you know what I mean? So, but I'm not a Christian really in the traditional sense. So, and I actually practice voodoo and Santeria. So I'm just kind of, I address those things as they come up.
Sure.
If something is coming up and it's bothering me, I will use various things. I will say in the name of Jesus. I might use a few Bible scriptures. I might use some holy water, but I might also use some tobacco and burn that, or, blessed salt, or black salt. There's, certain things, or like, in order to keep, nasty people out, you'll use like red brick dust. And that's usually like a voodoo hoodoo thing. So, there's various things that I can use now, because I've exposed myself to different things, different belief systems. So now I might use a little bit of this and a little bit of that to get rid of something.
Yeah, actually, I was just talking to, again, Mariah Canal about this, and I was thinking about cultural appropriation. Like, when is it okay to use a ritual from one religion or one culture? And I've always felt that it's really in the manner of how you do it. If, like, for me, I burn sage, but I have my own kind of ritual improv version of that, right? And you can put salt in four corners of the house, and this amalgamation of different techniques that one uses to ward off or to invite, whatever it might be. Do you think it's okay for us to kind of cherry pick from, anything from Christianity to indigenous first people in America, something from Santeria in Africa? And is that okay for us to do that?
I think so, to a point. I think these things are tools. And as long as you respect the culture that they come from, and you understand, that culture, and you understand the, you're not just randomly picking things. I think it's really great to educate yourself. As far as, why am I doing this? Why did the people that, why did the Native Americans, why are they doing this? Why did the Africans do this? And understand that, and consult somebody. It never hurts to consult someone who is in Santeria and say, can I use this? Should I use this? Just go about it that way. Just be respectful, respect the culture, and use the tools that you feel work for you. Because I know some people that don't sage, they use Palo Santo, or you know what I mean. So everyone is different. As long as you respect the culture, you're not appropriating, and you're not being disrespectful, and you're not like raping the culture. You know what I mean? You're not just randomly using things and you don't know why you're using them. Talk to people, reach out. There's a lot of elders, in a lot of communities, a lot of religions. Talk to them and say, I'm having this issue. What would you recommend? There's a lot of botanicas out there. And they're wonderful. Look up online different botanicas in your area and go and talk to people. And they would love to help you.
Voodoo came from Africa, and Santeria is a blend of voodoo and Christian beliefs. So that's already a borrowing or a meshing of different beliefs anyway. And much of what is in Christianity, appropriated pagan culture, right? And just to create this amalgamation of a culture that was the goal. But they still borrowed from other religions. So for you, what do you do? Like when you're at home, or maybe when you're going to a space where there's spirits, what do you burn for cleansing? What rituals do you use?
Well, I burn sage. Again, I use all the things that work for me, that have been kind of proven for me. Palo Santo, sage, white sage, and holy water, blessed salt, whatever, and again, I don't do a whole lot of removing. I'm more of a diagnostician. I'm able to go in and go, yep, you got this, and this here, and then call in somebody who really knows how to handle that sort of thing. I just don't feel like I'm powerful enough to get rid of stuff. You know what I mean? I'll make a confession. I don't really feel like I'm powerful enough to really know all that stuff. Like I would call in someone like Paulino, or Keith Johnson, someone who is a demonologist, someone who has dealt with a lot of different entities and knows how to get rid of things, and knows how to, because Paul even told me about a really interesting story, how he was dealing with this family, and they had this really maybe even several entities. And what they did was they got a joke book, because the negativity was so heavy and thick in this house. And it would affect all the family members. It would jump on them, and it would just turn everybody just kind of nasty, and everyone was at each other. And he said that they all sat around the table and read jokes and laughed. And something about that good, positive, happy, hopeful energy pushed out all the negativity. And these entities kind of went scattering, because they're like parasites. They live off of that negative energy. So, I mean, a joke book, you would think, okay, I'm going to go in there with my holy water, my Bible, and this, or my sage, or whatever. And a joke book did it. You know what I mean? So it's a different thing for everybody. Again, I'm more of a diagnostician as far as a medium go. I can go into places and go, yeah, you've got this, and this. I can kind of talk to them. Sometimes you can reason with stuff and say, look, you're scaring the crap out of this family. They don't really want to deal with you. I know this used to be your house or your land. Could you just back the heck up and just go somewhere and just not bother them? And you can stay here, protect the land, because they have that sort of attachment to it. But can you please stop scaring this family? And sometimes that's all it takes, is just a reasoning with them. And they're just like, oh yeah, cool. Sorry about that. Forgot I'm dead. And so they kind of go off in their corner, and the person, every once in a while they'll maybe hear or see something, but it's not like it was. And sometimes it takes the big guns. Sometimes you got to call out that demonologist and say, they got some stuff in there, and this thing does not want to leave.
So is that a technique? Is that something that people can employ, like positive energy, having fun. So if someone reports a, seemingly malevolent spirit in their house, is the best solution to not be afraid and to just kind of laugh it off? And that is an effective deterrent.
Again, everybody's different. Sometimes you've got that demon that's like, no, I was called here. I noticed a lot of these older houses that were built around the turn of the century when the spiritualism movement was coming in, and people were very randomly and kind of stupidly, very carelessly were opening doors when they were doing the Ouija board. And it wasn't an actual board. Like they actually had like like a tablecloth with like names and, with like yes and no and all that stuff. So they would do stuff with like a glass and, so around the turn of the century, people were just doing this as an after dinner, game. And they were opening, parlor game. And it was opening doors. And I think they really did allow a lot of weird stuff in, and they didn't know to shut that door, to close that door. You know what I mean? They didn't do any protective circles. You know what I mean? They didn't know this was a fun thing for them until it got really creepy and scary. So I think a lot of that stuff is still hanging around, and it's just kind of hanging around. It's like, hey, I was invited here and no one told me to leave, so I'm hanging out. And so whoever comes into their space, that house, they get to torment, because that's just what they do, that's
so really Well, I was gonna say that's a really interesting perspective. It kind of does remind me of like the Ghostbusters. Like this door is open and these spirits are let in, and then no one can. People just walked away from their parlor games, and everyone else is left to deal with it. But what does that mean if these spirits walked in, or they were already there and they just, kind of were awoken?
I can't tell you how many times I've gone into a space and I've, met with something that said, oh no, I was invited here. I was asked to be here. And I said, when? And it was, the kid, the teenagers playing the Ouija board, or the people back in, say, 1910, 1908, 1905, or whatever, they did their makeshift Ouija board thing, or they were holding a seance. And I was like, oh, you've been here that long? Wow. Okay. And you know what I mean? And nobody thought to say, okay, you need to go back now. Bye, and get rid of this thing. Or the kids played with it and something scary happened, and then they threw the board, they threw the board up in the attic and they didn't mess with it, but yet that door's still open. That thing was like, hey, you all invited me here. I'm here. Let's party. You know what I mean? And then the person's like, oh crap, what do I do? And then they may end up moving, but then someone else moves in and they're tormented by the same thing.
Yep. Do they forget that they're dead? Is this something common that you've experienced?
I don't know if they forget that they're dead. I think they know that they're dead. And I think much like I said about Scrooge, he was going up to people going, wait a minute, why can't they hear me? Why can't they see me? And I have had dead people come up to me and go, oh, hey, wait, you can see me? Awesome. Okay, great. Can I talk to you? Like they immediately freak out. They don't understand why they're not being heard and seen. And I think death might be a little bewildering for some people, especially when it happens so fast. You know what I mean? They're once one minute they've got this, flesh bag suit, this meat suit, and the next thing they're back in this sort of energy form, and they can't communicate. You know what I mean? Like you see in a lot of movies where all of a sudden someone dies and they're trying to they're trying to touch someone. Thank you. And they're trying to reach someone and their hand goes through them. You know what I mean? They don't know how to, they're freaking out. I think a lot of spirits are, from what I understand, they're just bewildered,
Yeah. If you're listening, state, if you're listening, MG's thank you was to Kevin Hale, giving her props for her awesome hat.
Thank you.
What can you tell us about your hat?
It's just a regular hat that I kind of dressed up. I put some feathers in it, that I found, and it's just an awesome hat. I love it. I wear it all the time, and I'm gonna get a few more different colors and whatnot. But yeah, I love hats. I don't know, just a thing.
Yeah. Apparel, and you have tattoos. Those are part of dressing ourselves and expressing ourselves. Do any of the tattoos that you have Are they symbolic for empowerment? Are they magic in any way?
Yeah, I have voodoo symbols. This one here, I don't know if you can see that. Where's the camera? There it is. Right there. That's Baron Samedi. That's a Bebe
Oh, yeah.
in
Baron
voodoo.
Baron
And
Baron Samedi
yeah, Baron
is also
Samedi.
yeah.
And then there's Papa Legba. There's his Bebe. There you go.
Okay, and I know that the Baron Samedi in particular can be a patron saint to gay and lesbians as well.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Or that's my understanding. So what does it mean to you?
When I started to research voodoo and Santeria, I started to be very drawn to Papa Legba and Baron Samedi. And I remember just really feeling like, oh, wow, I have a connection with these two more than any other Lola or Orisha. And when I used to live in the South and I had a Padrino and I used to talk to him and he used to do readings and he would say, you and either Papa Legba Elegua, you have a connection with him. He's, you know, and I said, yeah, he's my buddy. I don't know what it is with him, but we are very well connected. And I'll tell you a story that I did not include in the book because I really didn't think about it. I thought, well, that's kind of a dumb story, but I was trying to summon Elegua. And be careful, kids, don't do this. So I there was a particular, back in the early 2000s, there was a particular like dance that you could do to summon him. Now, mind you, I didn't have an Elegua head yet. I didn't have anything. I was very new to all of this. So I very stupidly summoned him, did this little dance, and I all I had was a picture of an Elegua head from my computer. Printed it out, put it on the wall, lit some candles, did my little dance. Later that night, I'm trying to sleep, and all of a sudden, I'm woken up by Elegua. He's standing there. He's tall, he's dark, he's muscular. He's like a black Mr. Clean, you know, and he's just standing there and he was laughing at me because the power that emanated from him was so strong. It pinned me to the bed. And so I'm like this, I'm like laying on the bed and I can't move an inch. And the power just radiating from him was just going through every cell of my body. And I was awake. And I remember him going, well, I'm here. What do you want? And I remember going, okay, like uncle, you know, like please stop. And he just laughed and he just kind of disappeared and I was able to move again. And stupidly, like a day or two later, I did it again. I did my little dance, you know, and then the next night, yeah, I know, it was so stupid. And then the next night he comes back and he's like, well, I'm here again. And sure enough, I was pinned to the bed and I was like, okay. But he was just laughing at me, you know, and I've been told by many people like, oh, Elegua likes you. You have a thing with him and you guys are buddies. And I'm like, yeah. Every, you know, there's times when I'll just say, Elegua, I really need your help. I need something. I'm freaking out about this. And then it fixes, it changes, it gets better.
Is the embodiment of Elegua an avatar for something that's more universal? Meaning, is because you said he had this force, this power, right? So because of the rituals that you're doing, addressing him as such, that's how this power appears to you. But is that power in another form to somebody else in a different religion or what have you?
I think so, because he has, if you read the Patakis, the stories about Elegua, he's at once he's an old man, but yet a little boy. And so, you know, you'll see him take different forms. And I've known people who have said, yeah, I've done my own Elegua ritual. And then all of a sudden I was walking through an alleyway and I saw this little boy, and Elegua's colors are red, black, and white. And I saw this little boy running away from me, like, you know, running this way. And I was going this way. And he had a red and black striped shirt on. And then all of a sudden he just disappeared. So, you know what I mean? That was my dog, sorry. But that was their encounter with Elegua. And there's times when they've seen him as an old man. So, I mean, he takes any form that he needs to show you what you need to know.
And what did you need to know? Why did you call him?
I was stupid. I need to know not to mess with stuff like that. Again, I was just starting out and I didn't really know any better, but I thought, hey, Alec was my buddy, right? Because I had such a connection with him for, a few years. And so, anytime I prayed or I needed something, boom, it was right there. So I thought, well, of course I can summon Alec. Well, why not? And I summoned him, and I think the most truest, purest form. And he showed up, and thankfully he liked me because I didn't die. He liked me, and he was just laughing. I just remember him laughing at me like, you dumb kid, you know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? He just had a lot of mercy on me, thank God, but it was funny. I can laugh at it now, and I'm sure he's laughing too, like, yeah, you dummy. But yeah, I mean, he was showing me like, be careful what you wish for, because you'll get it.
But what did you get out of it? Anything?
No, I didn't really get anything. It was a confirmation of how powerful he was. Cause when you're on this one side and you're praying for things, and you're kind of petitioning and you're doing your ebos, and you're getting, those answers, that's great. But when something comes at you in their sort of true, pure form, it's overwhelming. And like I said, it pinned me to the bed. The power radiating out of him was so strong. And he was saying, I'm a lot more powerful than you think I am. And I'm actually this. When you kind of put me in this little box, you think I'm this, I'm this too. I'm even more powerful than you ever thought I was. So that really, it woke me up.
Is he the only spirit that you've called forth?
Yeah. He's really the only one. I'm very interested in vocation and stuff like that. People that do summon demons, and they work with them. They work with was it Goetia or something like that? They work with different demons for different things, and they have really good results. I try not to get my Christian sort of upbringing into that, because I didn't go, oh my God, demons bad. But some people swear that a lot of these demons, if you work with them respectfully, you can form good relationships with them, and good things happen from it. So I don't know.
Well, it's odd, because as you're talking about demons, as soon as you started talking about demons, you started breaking up, and we could just hear you, but that was very odd. And you stopped, and now you stopped breaking up. That's very very bizarre.
That's interesting. Yeah, Terry Lovelace. I'll just tell you, Terry Lovelace. He will tell you himself that he's got these, what I call tech gremlins, where everywhere he goes, and we had the worst time. We've had several guests, never had audio issues, never had video. Every time we had Terry on like 4 different times, because he had a tornado warning and he had to run off. I mean, it was really scary, because he lives in Texas. And as we were interviewing him, we had several audio things, and I said, what is with the audio with you? And he just laughed. He said, I've been a guest on many shows and podcasts, and there's just tons of interference there. He went to some sort of convention before COVID, and excuse me, and he was trying to get some sort of, they had a virtual show, and he was trying to do the show, and he was trying to do this thing, and they just could never do it because the tech issues were so bad. And they all said the same thing. And another thing, he was talking to Whitley Strieber, and something happened with the audio, and Whitley Strieber had a sound person work on it, and the sound person said, I don't even know what that is. I don't even know what happened. So strange little tech demons followed Terry Lovelace around. So if you ever interview with him, just keep that in mind. You're going to need to do some tech checks.
Yeah, I have had the pleasure of interviewing Terry. He's a very nice person. And his story, he had experiences more than just the one he had with his friend and the abduction experience. Are you afraid that you'll have other paranormal experiences that are traumatizing, or do you feel like somehow you're in the clear?
You never know. And I can honestly sit here and say, I don't know what's going to happen 5 minutes from now. I don't know what's going to happen 2 weeks from now. I could have another one of those weird split things. That's how my life's always gone. I could see another UFO. I had a UFO encounter. And I haven't had one since, but who knows? I live in, California, and I could have plenty of, I mean, there's a lot of, I think we have more UFOs out in California than anywhere in the US, and I could see one tomorrow. I don't know. I never know when it's going to come up. There's no warning. There's no nothing. It just shows up, and then I'm like, oh, well, there's another one. Maybe I should write another book. You know.
So do you think that there are multiple MGs out there?
I hope not. I don't know. You mean like doppelgangers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know.
Or
I've never
in other realities.
other realities. You know what? You never know. I really believe, there's other planets out there, and the possibilities are endless. We can have another, mirror planet. Who knows? Yeah.
Is there an actual cryptid that you would like to have an encounter with?
Yeah, I would like to see a Bigfoot.
You would?
Yeah, I would like to see one far away, not like close up, nothing scary. Of course, we always want that sort of safe encounter, but yeah, I would love to see one. According to my own sort of indigenous background, my own, heritage, Cherokees always have, from what I've been told by my friends and family, that they have just a respective sort of, keep your distance kind of, he's the big brother of the forest. He takes care of everything. And if you respect his space, he respects yours and that sort of thing. So I would like to have, some sort of safe encounter with one. But you can't pick and choose your paranormal encounters. So don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is your heritage? Cherokee?
Cherokee. Yeah. Cherokee, Cherokee and English, Irish, Scottish and Welsh and Danish.
You and I are very close, except my Cherokee is like 1/30th or something like that.
Your great grandma was a Cherokee princess, right?
Like great aunt. Yeah.
Yeah, we hear about that. Yeah. No, my mom is half indigenous, and my dad also has Lakota. So
Yeah, I think at one point I think I calculated to like 1/16th. I really don't know, especially with bloodlines. It's so hard to tell. But I never have talked about that, I don't think, on this show ever before, because I don't like to do that, because I do feel like there are a lot of people that appropriate.
I hear
like,
about that.
Oh, I'm Cherokee. I'm like, no, I'm not Cherokee. Not by any means.
The great grandmother's Cherokee princess is such a thorn in our side. We're just kind of like, oh my God, stop it already. You know what I mean? And this appropriation. And I've been to so many powwows where I've seen, non-natives, appropriating and just being disrespectful, and they don't know they're being disrespectful. You got that person that thinks that they can walk around with a headdress on, and you're just looking at them like, stop,
Yes, but we also see people in the paranormal world kind of. Often I hear stories of someone saying that, I was taken in by this particular nation or tribe, right? And I'm an honorary member, and I don't know how there's no way to verify that, So I feel like sometimes people just go out there and say that, and then
Yeah. There's people that, call themselves shamans. You just got to be careful, because that new age shaman that, got their shamanism certificate at a yoga retreat, and, now they got a spirit guide named, Squatting Dog and all this stuff. You just kind of look at that like, yeah, just stop. You know what I mean? But you have people who are maybe sensitive, or they're interested in the paranormal, or they're interested in spirituality, and they want to tap into something. So they go, oh, I know, I knew of a lady, not so much with what we call a pretendian, but she was constantly bragging about going to, the Navajo Nation here, in Arizona. She was like, yeah, I go to their ceremonies. And I'm like, no, you don't. They don't do that. You know what I mean? So she was trying to get, I guess, street cred, native street cred, by saying she was, being invited to these ceremonies, and it doesn't work that way. From what my, Dene friends tell me all the time, they're like, it doesn't work that way. So, you get these non-native people, mostly white, that just kind of, they're interested and they want to get in there. But again, just talk to people, talk to the elders, talk to the council person for that tribe, just talk to them and just say, hey, look, I want to, learn something. Maybe you might be invited, but if not, stay away. Don't sit there and force your way into something like that, because natives today are just like, not putting up with it. We're not taking it. You know what I mean? Just stop. You're embarrassing yourself, and you're being really disrespectful.
maybe that's what needs to happen, right? Because I do agree, on occasion there's a little bit of honoring of Native American nations and people, but it's like once in a blue moon, like, hey, oh yeah, these people, remember them? They're great. Okay, moving on. And I do feel like there's a lot of Americans that see Native Americans as either like separate from them, and I don't understand that. It's odd. We were at a speaking event recently, and I think she was a nice person, probably just naive and ignorant, and accidentally mentioned to the speaker, who was Lakota, and said, oh, so it made this comparison about citizenship to Lakota and American, but he is American, and it was she wasn't malicious. It was just really naive.
It was just ignorant. Yeah. Naive, ignorant. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you don't speak up about it, and create more awareness, right?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a very strong, presence on TikTok, and indigenous presence on TikTok and Instagram. And if you go there, you'll see people, Native people just kind of saying, okay, don't do this. You know what I mean? Like, again, this school teacher, I won't get into it, but the school teacher that was just recently fired for, teaching mathematics, but cluelessly and stupidly and disrespectfully, wearing this sort of paper headdress and running around, what I mean? Like, she was never told that this was wrong. And I feel like this is kind of our moment where we're kind of saying, okay, you've done, you white people, non-natives don't know any better, but we're here to tell you, stop this, stop dressing like us for, Halloween. This is BS. You're being disrespectful. And, some people are super cool about it. They're like, oh gosh, I had no idea that this was wrong. And they stop, and they're great. They educate themselves. But then you have those people that just continue to do it. And they're like, well, I'm, my great-great-grandmother was a Cherokee princess. And it's just like, you're just like, oh God, one of these. They're just so disrespectful, and their white privilege is just, they don't care. They basically, they're racist. They don't care. And they just want to, they want to own something. You know what I mean? They want to say, this is mine. And it's like, no, that's not yours. We're taking that back. That's ours. You know what I mean? Again, yeah. And you have, up until a few years ago, non-black people thought it was okay to go up to a black person and start touching their hair or wearing cornrows or afros or something. And you're like, okay, that's wrong. And so you have to kind of reinforce that and keep that going and say, that's wrong. Stop touching people, stop touching anybody, but stop disrespecting black people by acting like you own them and you're allowed to touch them. You're allowed to comment on how they dress or what they say, what they do. And you know what I mean? You don't own nobody. You don't own black people. Let them do their thing and stop commenting on it, because that's not your place. You don't own anybody. And same thing with Native Americans, indigenous Americans, just stop this. Stop. Yeah, stop wearing headdresses. It's not cute. It's disrespectful. And we're just constantly saying this. And, in every victory, because we don't get a lot of victories, but when we do get a victory, like this teacher getting fired, it reverberates and it sends a message like, oh, and then, other non-natives will see that and say, oh, wow, that was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. I mean, I've seen completely clueless people, sweethearts, well-meaning, not knowing any better, saying stuff, doing stuff, touching, and then then someone stops them, and then they're just like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't know that was wrong. You know what I mean? It's all about education and reinforcement.
Yeah. I mean, how much does the, indigenous people of America or whatever term you use, because I know there's a lot of different preferences for terms. Like, some people are cool with like Indian Americans, some people are cool with Native Americans, some people are cool with indigenous, some people are cool with First Peoples. So as a non-indigenous person, what do we say? What's the right phrase?
It's different, and it changes. First it's Indians, first it's savages, bloodthirsty savages, then it's Indians, and then it's Native, or then it's American Indian, and then it's Native Americans. I mean, we still have AIM, American Indian movement. So we still have that, but you know what I mean? And some people, and I've talked to some Native friends of mine, and they're just like, I absolutely despise the term Native American because we're older than the term America. You know what I mean? We're the first people. We are the people. You know, like John Trudell would talk about. We're the people. We're not even Native Americans because we're older than America. And so, you know what I mean? So, and some people prefer indigenous. You know, everyone is different, and it changes a lot. And I've, you know, one Lakota person says, you know, my friend says, you know, I don't really care as long as you don't call me chief, as long as you don't call me Injun, you know, just don't call me those things. And I don't care what you call me. And then, you know, the other person is very specific. My Cree friend is like, no, you call me indigenous. So, you know what I mean? I don't want to speak for anybody. It's so hard. Sure. For me, you know, just don't be disrespectful. You can say native, indigenous, whatever, you know.
Do people still say Injun?
They say prairie inward.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah. You got some really nasty people out there that will call a Native American, indigenous American. They'll sit there and say, yeah, you're nothing but a prairie inward.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, but we're running out of time, so let's leave it on a thought for you, from you. What do you want to leave everybody with? It could be whatever you want, paranormal related or otherwise.
Stop being horrible to each other. Be good to the planet. Be good to each other. We're all in this together. Yeah. You know, let's work together. Our planet is in trouble. You know what I mean? Let's band together. If you don't like the way someone's living, you don't, that shouldn't affect you at all. That's not affecting you at all. Don't even pay attention to that. If you don't, someone's gay or someone's black or someone's autistic or they're this, that, or whatever, ignore that. Okay. Ignore that. And let's band together and let's, you know, start working to save our planet and get our country in order, our world in order. Let's put all this pettiness aside, because this pettiness is going to kill us all. we're in trouble in a way we're like, we haven't been in trouble in a long, you know, ever really. And so we need to, you know, put all this pettiness aside. And who cares if someone's gay or trans or what, you know what I mean? Let's put that aside. Who cares? Let's band together. Let's respect each other. I might not like somebody, but you know what? I'm going to respect them because they have the right to be here just like I do. You know what I mean?
So, but is there hope?
Is there hope? God, I hope there's hope. I hope that there's, you know, I hope we can, you know, I mean, I don't have much hope after I saw what happened when COVID first hit and we were hoarding toilet paper. I was like, oh God, we're doomed. We're hoarding toilet paper. And, you know, you see these poor elderly people going to the store and there's nothing there. And you didn't think that someone else might need that toilet paper. I mean, God's sake, think about someone other than yourself. Step back, see the big picture. You're not the only person on the planet. You're not the only person suffering. You're not the only person going through something. It's so easy to kind of narrow our vision and just focus on us. And, you know, let's take a nice step back and just see what's really going on with everybody and everything. And let's think about other people. Let's help other people. You know, you may be tired, but, you know, you see that elderly person struggling, go help them. It really makes a difference. Sometimes people, they're walking around with a smile on their face, but they have no hope in their heart at all. They've lost all hope. And that one little bit of kindness will save them. So please be kind.
Yeah. And thank you so much for joining tonight. I know it was a hard day for you earlier. So I really do appreciate you taking the time. And I think that we've all gotten a lot out of this. And I appreciate your voice, and you have great vibes. I feel like you've got a good heart, and I really appreciate it. And where can people find out more about you?
Well, I'm working on a website. So at some point, you know, look for mgstevens.net.com, you know, in a few months that'll be up. Because I do paint and I do make jewelry, and I do voiceovers and stuff like that. So that, and on YouTube is the Boogeyman Chronicles. If you want to read the book, it's on Amazon. You know, I have a you know, a little dinky Instagram. I'm not big on social media. I kind of don't get it. I'm not a big TikTok person. So, but I am on Instagram. Just type in MG Stevens. You'll find me, I'm sure. Yeah.
All right, MG, thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. And thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. And we went over a little than we normally would, but I think that was totally worth it. So thank you for hanging with us. And until next time, as always, peace and love. And if you liked this video, please like, comment, and subscribe down below. Share. I'd really appreciate it. And in the meantime, live in the mystery.